All right, it's 8/19, 2025, August 19th, 2025. It's a little bit after 1 o'clock in the morning. And so this talk right here is actually very personal for you, my grandchildren, coming from your grandfather, okay, because this is going to be the second one that I have mentioned family wisdom. All right, I'm going to give you some family wisdom, another thing of family wisdom, and I just hope to really quick kind of update my own progress in a couple of missions, or a couple of objectives underneath my main mission. I don't know. But anyway, I'd have to think a little bit more on that. I haven't actually given that a thought, but I do have definitely a couple of tasks at hand, and update on those on this 19th day of August 2025 at probably going about 1:30 in the morning. So anyway, family wisdom, and I'm gonna my point of reference is going to be I'm thinking the killing fields, but see, it's actually killing civilians. All right, because right now we have American states and areas within cities of states and stuff. People are starting to get killed. Look, they're planning on building 1,000 more concentration camps for the people and the children that ICE captures, and they put them in there indefinitely. And we don't have enough judges to give all these people hearings, because Trump fired them all and he won't allow any more judges. So they're just putting people in the concentration camps, you see? Even kids, like 2, 3, 4-year-olds. I mean, I've heard them talking on ProPublic and on the Midas Touch Network. I've seen the videos. ProPublic, is a news agency and captures the videos of what's going on. People send them to them, and people send those videos to Midas Touch Network, and I watch them. I watch these people they're getting apprehended and stuff, and the ICE agents are saying stuff like, "We're here to take America back." I mean, this is a bad time, and this is like Nazi, the Third Reich all over again, and the rise of Nazism. And it's scary. I mean, the thoughts that I have are like, if I had seen it going on and I had a gun, man, I might try to take some people out. Some of them ICE agents. I mean, like, that's where I'm thinking. I'm thinking war. I'm talking about civil war, and it's in our Constitution, the right to bear arms. And the Constitution, proclaims in the preamble of the Constitution, it talks about the equality of human beings, and that we are supposed to abide by laws, and that every person has a right to be heard. And that right is being taken away. That's the very first lines in our Constitution, in the preamble. I wish I wasn't thinking about that. I should have pulled it up, because it's a very eloquent piece of thought and literature and belief. and foundation, you know. But and you know, Trump is you know, he's also like, this is going to be an object lesson, all right? I have to give it the proper introduction, but I'll just tell you right now about Trump. You know, he's like sucking up to Putin, and you know, you know, Putin is an autocrat. Okay, he's a dictator, and Trump is making himself to be a dictator. Like, he wants to be a dictator. Because that's what he has been all his life. And like a bully. Not a good dictator. I'm talking about a dictator that rules by force. Serves the god Baal. 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 However you want to say it. Look, he lies, cheats, and steals. And so I'll just update first of all before I go on, you know. I've finally come to the conclusion that I'm gonna go ahead and erect a big sign, you know, stating something, because the situation calls for it. And, you know, my voice is gonna be heard. Anyway, so I'm gonna make it. I got, you know, I ain't got a refrigerator in here. I got a little one out here, but my refrigerator went out. It cost about $700 or something for another one. And I just bought this one from Habitat for Humanity for about $220, and it went out after not even 2 months, I think. But okay, you know what? So okay, I just I'm gonna give this little object lesson about the food and cigarettes first. Okay, so the first object lesson, and this is about thinking critically. Okay, I'll just preface it with this. You know, it's family wisdom, because I haven't found the letter yet. I hope I still have it. You know, tucked somewhere, because you know how stuff is. Anyway, of my dad telling me he wrote me a letter when I was still in high school, and I think I was like getting ready to go to college or something. I knew I was going to go to college, and he wrote me a letter, and a short letter, only about like that long, you know, maybe even only that long, but handwritten. And but he told me something about proceeding and thinking critically, and then he put 3 points, three supporting, you know, points about, you know, what that actually meant. Okay, and kind of defined thinking critically. All right, well, I can't remember exactly what his 3 points were, but I'm thinking that they were pretty much like, you know, I mean, you know, using the scientific method. Okay, and what I learned, and when I learned, you know, to study the Bible critically, because you know, you have to study it according to its context, you know, the grammar of the language and the language itself, you know, and then also Sitz im Leben, the situation in life. Okay, so you got to look at the context, and I don't remember if the other one was, and I'm thinking about hermeneutics right now, because the first thing they teach you is hermeneutics. You know, that's interpretation. Okay, and you got to look at, you got to figure out what things are, like, you know, like, I mean, if something is a allegory, or if it's a you know, like exaggeration, or if it's satire, or I mean, or the case of the nouns, or the subject is it subject of the nouns, or whatever, the sense, the tense of the verbs. What tense they in. You think critically. Actually, you can't just think, okay, well, it sounds like it means this to me. No, you got to actually study it according to its context. Context in life, context in grammar and structure. Like a lot of the Hebrew stuff, it's written in stanzas, like 2 lines, then 2 lines that mean they're saying the same thing in the first 2 lines, say the same thing in the second 2 lines, except just another way. And it's sort of and it's a rhythm like that, and they use it to give rhythm to whatever is being said. And that comes from the Old Testament. And but look, I'm just saying, okay? So that's my dad. My dad's family wisdom right there, okay? My dad told me that. And then I learned that also when I went to undergraduate school, and when I went to graduate school, and when I worked as a chaplain or a patient family counselor at UVA Medical Center, because they use a scientific approach. And so anyway, it's a discipline, all right? So anyway, okay, that's a bit of family wisdom, think critically. But what I'm going to do right here, see, I got it was so important to me that I actually, I left it off. The last one I wrote in this here, my book, I think, right there. Okay. That's my mom and my dad agree. I remember thinking about, I was feeling very fortunate that it seems to me that they both speak to me still, and that they're talking to me, and they're not at odds with each other. Okay. Well, look, this is where I am today. Okay. This is where I start my page, but then I kind of get clarification on this side for this side. See, when I do my book, I always skip a page, like I have one blank page, but then I fill that page with other stuff, kind of, mostly. Okay, so I got that, and I got that, and this may be my reference, because I don't forget some stuff, but because what I really want to do now is I'm talking about, I'm making a sign, right? So I'm thinking about what am I going to put on my sign. And so I decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it like a game board. I'm going to say, who am I? And then I'm going to put down bullet points, okay? And it's going to be about Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is the main mover and shaker in America right now. I mean, he's setting the tone. He's the president, okay? And he's doing a lot of bad stuff. And he's done a lot of bad stuff in his life. He's been convicted for it in the court of law. Okay. But look, so what I'm going to do though is this is how I was trained, to use primary sources, and so that's what I'm doing right now. And what I'm going to do from a sign is I'm going to say who am I, and then I'm going to list all these delineated points, of like characteristics, like I am a convicted rapist. I am covering up for the trafficking ring and the pedophile network from Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, or however you say her name. First name, I don't know. The last name is Maxwell. She's still alive. Epstein is dead because he got killed while he was in jail. They said it's suicide, but that's not what the autopsy guy said. He said he was killed. And the government put out a different story, but the real doctor, because Epstein's brother was there, the real doctor, the first doctor, said it's consistent with being killed. And there's a cover-up about that. And there's a big cover-up, Trump's name and everything being redacted from all this material. And now they're trying to like destroy all the evidence. Anyway, so I was thinking about it. I'm just gonna take a section of Trump's history, going from the Epstein to where we are right now with Ukraine. I'm just gonna take that section right there and take bullet points out of that and say, who am I? And then write all that down. And then for a challenge, I also want to say in my sign, there's a call to action. We got to stop Donald Trump. And the way to do that, we got to first get a majority in the House and in the Senate with the midterm elections. So we can stop him. That's the only way. Otherwise, he's going to make these 1,000, I was going to say extermination camps. I mean, they're not taking good care of these people. And they're taking even little children. So anyway, nerve-wracking. And it's so nerve-wracking that I bought a pack of cigarettes. And I'm actually now on my 5th pack, all right? I've been smoking now for about 5 days. And so I realized, through thinking critically, because, thinking, okay, I ain't got a refrigerator, so not handy anyway. So I got to go through more work. I got to go out to the garage. I got one in the garage. I got some food in there. I got to go out there and get it. Got to do all this stuff. And I thought I just don't eat because it's too much of a hassle to actually be given that physical urge all that much attention. But okay, that's where cigarettes come in. So I just smoke instead of eat. All right, and that's why some people who get heavy after they quit smoking is because the cigarettes kind of supply like a transitional kind of object or something, for your hunger or whatever anxiety you might be feeling. Okay, and what I figured is that see, the cigarettes itself, like, you might not have like a neurosis with anxiety, but then after you start smoking cigarettes, then every little thing, you want to reach for a cigarette. Talk on the phone, reach for a cigarette. Get a little bit hungry, grab a cigarette. Have to think about something hard, grab a cigarette. Feeling tired, grab a cigarette. All right. And then what that does, that just reinforces the anxiety. See, if you didn't have a cigarette, then you deal with the anxiety a different way. And so, I come to terms with that tonight. Thinking about that. That's why, I got to make this my last pack, because look, I've smoked in my life. It's easy for me to get hooked on cigarettes. But I've quit a lot of times, and I'm going to quit again. I haven't smoked, up until now for, I don't know, a pretty long time. Seems to me like about a year, anyway. And then I just smoked a little bit before that, and then before that I quit smoking for, I don't know, a couple of 2-3 years or something. But if you ever did smoke, and you smoke a little bit, you realize how easy it is and how it can, it's like a pacifier. That's what the word I was trying to think of, like a pacifier. But you gotta give up the pacifier. you gotta, and then if you get rid of the pacifier, then you get rid of the anxiety. See, that's how you change your action, then your feelings will follow. Or you can change your feelings first, and then your actions will follow. Well, I'm doing both simultaneously. Okay, so anyway, so that was my little object lesson about, cigarettes, all right? Now I want to go on to, and critical thinking, because that's critical thinking right there, Okay, so now I want to just go on to what is stuff that I'm thinking about I'm going to put up on my sign, all right? And so right now Trump is, he went to Alaska and met Putin he stated that he was going to get a ceasefire in Ukraine because, you know, Russia is taking over Ukraine, and they've already got the border in some area of their border, and it's it's a prime location. Like, there's a lot of minerals there and everything, and anyway, it's a valuable area, and I think it's right on the water. I think. I'm not sure. I got a globe up here. I could look, but that's not the real issue. The issue is, see, at first, Russia went and started invading Ukraine in 2013 because, you know, I'm pretty sure it's because we were going to put missiles on the border right there, and we're a part of NATO, okay? And we had treaties, but they were with Russia, and disarmament treaties, but the United States, you know, removed themselves from it, and you know, started, and then Russia took it upon themselves because legally, you know, they had some kind of title to the area, but I don't know, there's old agreements and stuff, and Putin knows all these. He'd talk for an hour about it, you know, all the way back to the 1500s, all right? And after World War II, that's when things started, lines started being drawn, you know, and people started, like, taking control of certain areas. I mean, you know, states started taking control of certain areas, okay? And so that is when, you know, Hitler was defeated, and the alliance that defeated Hitler was England and America, and the three of them. England and America, I can't remember the other one, but maybe French. Maybe it was French and English in America. But anyway, so different, or maybe it was called Britain, and I don't know. Anyway, it's World War II, and so then NATO was formed in 1945. You know, just after the war, as an alliance between a few nations, you know, the ones that defeated Hitler. But then, see, and then Germany also joined NATO, and NATO is an alliance, okay, and but Russia's not in it, and China's not in it, you know. It's just like for our part of the world, and but Ukraine is not in it, and Trump said that he's going to broker a peace, not a peace deal, but a ceasefire. Because first, before they can make a peace treaty, they gotta have a ceasefire because they're at war, and you know, Russia and Putin has taken over part of Ukraine already, and you know, and then America quit supporting Ukraine, and. Yeah, and I thought the deal was that England was going to pay America to give Ukraine arms, and that way America would make a profit, and they would be helping Ukraine. But Trump decided, you know, he didn't want to help Ukraine no more. And furthermore, when he met Putin in Alaska just recently, you know, I mean, he rolled out the red carpet for Putin. And he's calling him Vladimir, and he didn't have any diplomats or anything prepare the way for any kind of a negotiation with Putin. He just completely caved into Putin, and before the whole world, and he's just acting like he's working for Putin. And so, Jon Stewart, he did a skit comedy recently where the WWE had Klavinsky, or whatever his name is, I can't remember, from president of Ukraine, and then Trump, and then Putin. And so, if Trump would say, hey, Ukraine, how about you join NATO? Well, that would be a great thing. And they got money set aside that they seized from Russia a long time ago, like $15 billion, and they could use that money to help restore Ukraine. And then they could broker some kind of peace deal, And, but, that ain't the way it's working. And so anyway, in the skit, Putin says to America, go like this. It's set in WWE, and it's John Cena, The Rock, and the Ref. Okay, so the Ref is talking to Trump, and then oh no, the Ref is Ukraine. Okay, Ukraine, the Ref is talking to Trump, the guy, and then Putin says go like that, and then Trump knees Ukraine right in the nuts. Okay. Anyway, you should actually look for the skit. Jon Stewart, The Daily Show. It's on YouTube. Look for something that has to do with Putin and Trump and WWE. But anyway, it's kind of what Trump did. And see, Trump, when he got impeached the first time, he told Blazinski, or whatever his name is, he said, "Look, man, just put on this on your TV that I think Hillary Clinton is up for some kind of charges, and it don't got to be true. Just say it." And the guy from Ukraine wouldn't do it, But see, Trump is trying to get people to cheat, even then. All right, so look, I'm already at 27 minutes, so so we're gonna wrap this up. So anyway, okay, I got to show you this because see, this is so what Trump didn't do is, he didn't use it. This guy here, he was the ambassador in with Obama. He was the ambassador like for 8 years to Russia. And I'm talking about primary sources, all right? He knows people that came from Ukraine that lived in the Donbass where the land was overtaken and stuff, and he knows them, and they've relocated, got out of there because people are getting killed, and Putin kills civilians, and he's up for war crimes, and by the international court, he's charged with war crimes because he took between 20 and 40,000 children, kidnapped them from Ukraine in that area, and he's indoctrinating them into Russian thinking, but they're children of people from Ukraine, and he kills civilians. Okay, and that's the connection I want to make. Trump is buddy with this guy, Putin. Okay, rolled out the red carpet for him. He does. He ain't getting no ceasefire. He's telling Ukraine to give up their land. He's doing Putin's bidding, and so I want to point that out on my sign. Okay, that's critical thinking. That's looking at what's actually going on. Okay, we're part of NATO, and he's siding with Putin. Because he wants to be like Putin, and he's killing people, if not their bodies, their spirit, and ICE is beating the heck out of people, busting their windows, pulling them out of their cars, without any kind of warrant or anything, just taking them away, and even kids. Right? That's why I got to put a sign out there. Got to point this stuff out. But I'm gonna just show you this. So this is an ambassador, okay? And listen to what he says.
Preventable, and it has a 93% cure rate if it's detected early. Right. But I know what he went through. I know what his family went through, and I'm just so sorry.
Appreciate that. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah. So gosh, we have so much to unpack right now. I want to go backwards only because I want to set the scene if we can.
Sure.
Like in terms of today's meeting. Let's talk about Friday's meeting first and foremost.
Okay.
We were scheduled to have a conversation. Obviously, you couldn't do that on Friday because of your brother. But I'm curious, as someone who has participated in these high-level talks, what your impressions were of this meeting with President Trump and Vladimir Putin.
Well, lots of impressions, and you're right. I have been kind of the point person, especially when I worked at the White House for President Obama to arrange meetings with Russian presidents, both Putin and Medvedev. He was the president back when I was there. And I would just say there are a lot of things that were different about this meeting than what I would call standard operating procedure. So first, the normal procedure is that summits of that nature, especially with all that, red carpets and planes and all that, they generally take place at the end of big negotiations. And in the process leading up to it, there's, lower level officials like me and other people prepare documents, prepare agreements. In one case, we negotiated the New START Treaty in 2010 with the Russians. That took about a year and a half of negotiations. And then we held the summit, right? We flew to Prague. The two presidents got together. They signed that agreement. And by the way, we got rid of 30% of the nuclear weapons in the world that day, right? Win-win for both sides, win-win for the world. What was different about this is it was meet first with no negotiations, no agreements ahead of time. So that was odd. Second, diplomats, presidents, secretaries of state, they always have to deal with autocrats from time to time to get things done that are good for the American people, right? That's part of the job.
Do you need a loan for your business? Well, if you've been around...
He was a former Secretary of State for Ronald Reagan, George Shultz. George used to always say, you got to do these meetings, but you don't check your values at the door. And what was strange to me was that President Trump was treating this dictator at home who's murdered two of my personal friends, just so maybe I'm a little biased, but he's murdered Alexei Navalny, he's murdered Boris Nemtsov, and he's put in jail lots of other people. He then launched this imperial war of annexation against Ukraine, first in 2014, and then he expanded it in 2022. That's the first time since Hitler and Stalin have there been full-scale invasions and occupations and annexation in Europe. So that puts him in another category. And yet, and he's the same guy that's taken thousands of Ukrainian children, kidnapped them, terrorizes Ukrainian civilians every single night. The night before they've met, more Ukrainians died. And yet, President Trump just treated him like they were best friends, right? There was none of this. It was just normalizing imperialism, I guess is the way I put it, normalizing dictatorship, normalizing an indicted war criminal. And you can meet with difficult autocrats without doing all that. So that was the second impression I had. But then the third impression is, okay, well, maybe I'm just biased because I prefer democracy over dictators and I like freedom over not, and I prefer good over evil. Okay, I got that. I'm just, the realpolitik, people would say McFaul is just too much of an idealist or something. Okay, but if you're going to be the transactional leader that Trump claims he is, the art of the deal guy, what did he get out of it? What's the transaction? As far as I can tell, we got nothing out of that meeting that advances American national interests. And I want to really stress that. The President of the United States' job is to advance our national interests and our allies and our partners. And I I don't see, in the State Department, we used to call these deliverables. There was not a concrete deliverable out of that meeting. Now, afterwards, they tried to spin it. The president's special envoy, Mr. Witkoff, said afterwards that they got Putin to agree to security guarantees. And then the Russians denounced that today. They said that wasn't true.
And what does that mean exactly, security guarantees?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because it's a very amorphous word that doesn't mean anything unless it's specified. So the idea is, and the Ukrainians have focused on this for all these negotiations for a long time, they might be prepared to give up territory. Or let me be more precise. They might be prepared to only unify their country through peaceful means. They're never going to say this is your land, but they might say that. But they want to do that in return for a permanent peace, not just one that lasts for a couple years and then Putin invades again. And that's what happened to them before, right? They've had those kind of guarantees before and they were invaded again. So they want something greater than that. The conversation that's taking place as we're talking at the White House is about what our European colleagues are calling Article 5-like security guarantees. And Article 5 is of the NATO treaty that says an attack on one is an attack on all. And the idea behind that would be, therefore, if Ukraine was attacked in the future, that those participating in this new security guarantee agreement would in essence, go to war with Russia. That's what they're discussing. But, I look at that, why NATO light when you can have NATO, right? I just think, and note, I want to be clear, this is just my views. I know President Trump doesn't agree, but I think a really breakthrough idea would be to negotiate with the Russians about where the borders are and to acquiesce for them to continue to occupy some part of Ukrainian territory. And that happens on day one. And then day two, the NATO leaders, they meet in Brussels and they say, we are inviting Ukraine to join. And I said day one, day two, because those things should not be together. Putin doesn't get to have a vote about who we get to ally with or not. It's none of his business. But I think that would be a really breakthrough enduring peace. And then if Trump did that, yes, he should get his Nobel Peace Prize. That's not going to happen because he's already taken that off the table. And that's part of the strange thing about Trump's just diplomacy 101. You have cards, like I've negotiated with the Russians, right? On multiple hard negotiations. You come in and you have things you might trade, but you trade them. You like, okay, I'll give you this. For instance, we'll recognize Crimea, but then you give me this. And the odd part about Trump's negotiating style is he just keeps playing cards without getting anything in return. So over the weekend, he said no NATO membership for Ukraine, and Ukraine has to give up Crimea. I just think he should try to play those cards for something of value.
Well, can we talk about this land, this region that's in question, that Putin wants to become part of Russia, right? I mean, yes. He wants to take it back from Ukraine. It's called the Donbas region, right?
Yes.
Or that area. It's eastern Ukraine. I wish I had a map here, but I'd love for you, Mike, to explain to everyone what that region means to Ukraine. And I'm surprised, but what do I know? I'm not a negotiator, and I'm certainly not an expert in this part of the world, that Ukraine is considering ceding that territory to Russia.
Well, those are great questions, and I don't have great answers. Just to think of, for everybody watching in your mind, there's 4 regions. Think of them as states, like the American states, right? So there's 4 regions that most of the fighting has been taking place in. And each of those 4 regions are partially occupied by the Russians today. And one of those pieces, almost 90%, right? And so 2 years ago, Putin held a big ceremony where he said these 4 regions are now part of the Russian Federation. in addition to Crimea, which he annexed back in 2014, right? So 5 regions of Russia, 5 states, if you will, of the Ukrainian country, Putin has already, de jure annexed, not de facto, de jure. And he one is just on paper and one is in reality. So on paper, he had a big ceremony, there's parades in the Kremlin, and they say he had all these fictitious leaders from these places saying, you're now a part of Russia, right? But de facto, on the ground, in reality, he doesn't control any of those places 100%. So to the best of our understanding, because we never really got a good readout from what happened in Alaska, but to the best of our understanding, what Putin asked for in Alaska, pretty audacious. He said Donbass, that's 2 of those regions, right? That's up in the northeast corner. He said, Mr. President, convince Zelensky to leave Donbass. And remember, Ukrainian soldiers and Ukrainians now hold parts of Donbass as we speak, right? Just got a photo from one of my friends who was there just 3 days ago. It's Ukrainian-held territory. And Putin says, you got to convince Zelensky to give me those 2 regions, and in return, I will stop fighting in those other 2 regions that I just mentioned, right? Kherson and Zaporizhia is what they're called. So that's his deal. That's his offer. And the Ukrainians, I talked to many Ukrainians afterwards. I mean, this is nonsense from them. The idea that they would give up territory that hasn't even been conquered is just a non-starter. But that's what Putin asked for on Friday.
Braze, the most advanced localization platform for...
So you see, I played that because that fella, I forget what his name is now, McPherson, anyway, the old ambassador to Russia, he has his primary sources, okay? Well, he is my primary source. He's a primary source. See, as opposed to like bullshit that you just hear on especially like from Fox television, okay? Because they've already been convicted in court of fraud because they put out propaganda and say that it's real. But they keep doing it because it's a moneymaker. And see that, and Trump, that's all, he's all about propaganda. And, he has a whole propaganda network spewing out lies. And he's trying to be like Putin, and he's doing Putin's bidding. And and he's not, promoting that Ukraine be part of NATO so that they could have protection. Right? Now granted, like Richard Wolff says, NATO is like done. BRICS is more substantial, and BRICS is like China, Asia, India, and Russia. I'm not sure if they joined anything. I'm not really sure if they're part of BRICS or not. I don't think they are, because nobody's coming to Russia's aid. So anyway, I'm just saying, okay, this is a long one, but I just have to wrap it up with this, all right? That I played that because that's an object lesson for you to understand critical thinking. And that's family wisdom. That comes from my dad, and that comes from what I've learned, and I'm passing it on to you. You gotta think critically. You gotta look at the primary sources, okay? There's a comparative analysis now between what Trump is doing and what used to be what, this fellow here, McPherson, he called standard order of procedure. SOP, standard order of procedure. In business and everywhere, you have a standard order of procedure. In the military, you got a standard order of procedure. Trump is violating all standard order of procedures. All right, and that, I'm telling you that this is critical thinking at work. Listen to that guy talk, okay? Because he's talking reality, all right? Not propaganda. You know, Putin's a war criminal. And he's a dictator. And Trump is doing his bidding instead of being loyal to NATO and the principles set forth in NATO. Like, he ain't paying any attention to that. And so that's why I'm going to put up my sign. I'm going to go from Epstein to Ukraine. All right, bye.